It was just after midnight when the cleaning crew arrived at the sprawling glass and steel mansion on the outskirts of the city. The place gleamed like a jewel under the moonlight, its pristine perfection a testament to the wealth and power of its owner. Maya Reyes tightened her grip on the handle of her mop bucket as she stepped out of the service van. She had cleaned plenty of luxurious homes before, but this one was different. The air around it seemed charged, humming with an energy she couldn't explain. "Don't let it get to you," her coworker Carla whispered, nudging her with an elbow. "Rich folks like these don't even see us. Just do the job and leave." Maya nodded, though unease prickled at her skin. She had heard stories about the owner of this mansion, a reclusive tech mogul named Victor Hall. Rumor had it he rarely stayed in one place for long and kept his personal life shrouded in mystery. The crew entered through a side door, their footsteps muffled on the gleaming marble floors. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt too heavy to be natural. As Maya made her way to the main living area, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The usual signs of a bustling household, shoes by the door, a forgotten coffee mug, were nowhere to be found. Instead, everything was meticulously arranged, almost as if no one lived there at all. "Creepy," she muttered under her breath, glancing at the high-tech security cameras mounted in every corner. She was scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain on the floor when she heard it, a faint, muffled sound. It was coming from the hallway leading to the study. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. No answer. Maya hesitated, her heart thumping in her chest. She wasn't supposed to investigate anything. It wasn't her job. But the sound came again, louder this time. Curiosity got the better of her. She set down her mop and crept toward the study, her sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. The double doors were ajar, and she pushed them open cautiously. What she saw made her blood run cold. Victor Hall was slumped over his desk, his face pale and his breathing labored. A glass of something dark sat near his hand, half empty. "Mr. Hall?" Maya said, rushing to his side. "Are you okay?" He looked up at her, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "Help me," he rasped, his voice barely audible. Without thinking, Maya grabbed her phone and dialed 911. As she gave the operator the address, Victor grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "Not the hospital," he choked out. "You need help," Maya insisted, but he shook his head violently. "Listen," he said, his voice low and urgent. "It wasn't an accident. They're trying to—" His words trailed off, his grip weakening. Maya's mind raced. What was he talking about? Who was trying to hurt him? The sound of approaching footsteps snapped her out of her thoughts. A tall man in a sharp black suit entered the study, his expression unreadable. "What's going on here?" he asked, his gaze darting between Maya and Victor. Maya stood protectively by Victor's side. "He needs medical attention," she said firmly. The man frowned, pulling out a sleek phone and making a quick call. "Bring the doctor," he said curtly before turning to Maya. "Thank you for alerting us. You can go back to your work now." Something about his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm not leaving until I know he's okay," she said, surprising even herself with the steel in her voice. The man's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Victor's hand weakly gestured toward her. "Stay," he whispered. The man sighed, clearly irritated, but said nothing more. Minutes later, a woman arrived carrying a medical bag. She moved quickly, checking Victor's vitals and administering an injection. As she worked, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why had Victor been so adamant about not going to the hospital? And what did he mean about someone trying to hurt him? When the doctor finished, she turned to the man in the suit. "He'll be fine for now, but he needs rest." The man nodded, then fixed his gaze on Maya. "You've done your part. You can leave." Victor's hand grabbed hers again, his grip stronger this time. "Be careful," he murmured. "Be careful of what?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked at her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. "They're watching. They're always watching." Before she could ask what he meant, The man in the suit stepped between them. "That's enough," he said sharply. "Leave now, or I'll have security escort you out." Reluctantly, Maya left the study, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled into something much bigger than herself. By the time the crew finished cleaning and left the mansion, the sun was beginning to rise. Maya walked to her small, beat-up car, the events of the night replaying in her mind. As she pulled onto the quiet suburban street where she lived, her eyes widened in shock. Parked in front of her modest house was a sleek black luxury car, its glossy surface gleaming in the early morning light. Maya's heart raced as she parked her car and approached cautiously. The windows were tinted, but she could make out a faint figure sitting inside. The driver's side window rolled down smoothly, revealing the man in the suit from the mansion. "We need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Maya stared at him, her pulse pounding. "What is this about?" His gaze was steady. "About Mr. Hall, and the warning you gave him." Maya's pulse raced as she stared at the man in the suit. The early morning quiet of her street felt stifling now, as if the air itself held its breath. "What warning?" she asked, feigning ignorance. The man's lips curled into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You might be good at cleaning floors, but you're terrible at lying." Maya's jaw clenched. The mix of fear and indignation made her bold. "Look, I don't know what you think I did, but I was just doing my job." The man raised a brow, his sharp features unreadable. "You called for help. You insisted on staying when others would have walked away. That's not just doing your job, Ms. Reyes. That's getting involved." Maya crossed her arms, her courage growing despite the danger in his tone. "Fine. Maybe I got involved. Maybe I helped someone who needed it. But I'm not part of whatever this is." The man's smile grew tighter. "And yet here you are, standing in front of your house, being approached by me. You've already made yourself part of this." Maya took a step back, her instinct screaming at her to run. But where could she go? Her beat-up car wasn't outrunning a luxury vehicle, and this man didn't seem the type to lose track of her. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice quieter now. The man gestured to the sleek black car. "Get in. We'll discuss it somewhere more private." "Not a chance," Maya said, shaking her head. "If you have something to say, you can say it here." The man tilted his head, studying her. "I admire your resolve, Ms. Reyes, but you do well to understand the stakes here. Get in the car, and I'll explain everything. Or stay here and wonder how quickly your life can turn upside down." His words sent a chill down her spine. Maya glanced at the darkened windows of the car, then at the empty street. The temptation to slam the door in his face and pretend this never happened was overwhelming. But Victor Hall's pale face and urgent warning echoed in her mind. "They're watching. They're always watching." She exhaled sharply, then nodded. "Fine, but I'm keeping the door unlocked." The man's smile returned, faint and calculating. "As you wish." He opened the back door for her, and she climbed inside, her senses on high alert. The interior smelled of leather and something faintly metallic. As the man slid into the seat beside her, the car began to move smoothly, the engine purring like a predator. "I don't even know your name," Maya said, glancing at him warily. "You can call me Carter," he replied. "And who do you work for, Carter?" "Mr. Hall," he said simply. "Right," Maya said, her suspicion deepening. "So why are you here instead of him?" Carter leaned back, his gaze sharp. "Victor Hall is a very important man. He doesn't involve himself directly in matters that can be delegated." Maya frowned. "So I'm just another matter to delegate?" Carter's faint smile didn't waver. "Think of yourself as someone who stumbled into a very delicate situation. Mr. Hall wants to ensure you're handled with care." "Handled?" Maya repeated, bristling. "I didn't ask to be involved in any of this. I just did what any decent person would have done." "Exactly," Carter said, his tone unreadable. "And that's why you're here." The car turned onto a secluded road lined with towering trees. Maya's unease deepened. "Where are you taking me?" "To a place where we can talk freely," Carter replied. "We're almost there." True to his word, the car soon pulled into a gated property surrounded by high walls. As the gates opened, Maya glimpsed a smaller but equally opulent mansion tucked away behind the trees. "Nice," she muttered under her breath. "Is this where you take all the people you handle?" Carter ignored the jab, stepping out of the car and gesturing for her to follow. She hesitated for a moment, then climbed out, her resolve hardening. The interior of the mansion was sleek and modern, with polished floors and minimalist decor. Carter led her to a sitting room where a tray of tea and pastries waited. "Have a seat," he said, motioning to a plush armchair. Maya stayed standing. "I'd rather stand. Get to the point." Carter's lips twitched in amusement. "Very well. Mr. Hall is grateful for your assistance last night. Without your quick thinking, he might not be alive right now." Maya folded her arms. "So why does he need you to tell me that? Why not thank me himself?" Carter's expression darkened. "Because this isn't just gratitude, Ms. Reyes. It's also a warning." Her stomach tightened. "A warning about what?" "Victor Hall is a powerful man," Carter said. "And powerful men make powerful enemies. The incident you witnessed wasn't random. It was a targeted attack." Maya's breath hitched. "You're saying someone tried to poison him?" Carter nodded. "We're still investigating the details, but yes, someone close to Mr. Hall wanted him dead. And you, Ms. Reyes, are now a loose end." Her blood ran cold. "A loose end? I didn't see anything. I don't know anything." "That doesn't matter to them," Carter said, his voice firm. "The people behind this won't take chances. If they think you're a threat, they'll come after you." Maya's heart pounded as she processed his words. "So what are you saying? That I should go into hiding?" Carter shook his head. "No. Mr. Hall doesn't abandon the people who help him. He wants to protect you." "Protect me how?" Carter reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek envelope, handing it to her. Maya opened it cautiously, her eyes widening as she read the contents. Inside was a deed to a new house in a gated community, along with a bank statement showing an obscene amount of money deposited in her name. This can't be real," she whispered. "It's very real," Carter said. "The house is fully secured, and the funds are yours to use as you see fit. All Mr. Hall asks in return is that you keep quiet about what you saw." Maya's hands trembled as she clutched the envelope. "And if I don't?" Carter's smile was cold. "Then you'll be on your own. And trust me, Ms. Reyes, you don't want to be on your own." Her mind raced. The offer was tempting, almost too good to be true, but the weight of it pressed heavily on her chest. Accepting meant stepping into a world she didn't understand, one where danger lurked around every corner. "What if I just walk away?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Walking away isn't an option anymore." Maya stared at him, her resolve wavering. The events of the past 12 hours had turned her life upside down, and she had no idea how to fix it. "Think carefully, Ms. Reyes," Carter said, his voice low and deliberate. "Because once you decide, there's no going back." The envelope in Maya's trembling hands felt heavier than it should, as if it contained the weight of the decision she was being forced to make. The air in the sleek sitting room seemed to close in around her, Carter's cold, calculating gaze pinning her to the spot. "This isn't fair," she said finally, her voice cracking. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to help someone who looked like they needed it." Carter's expression softened, but only slightly. "Fairness has nothing to do with it, Ms. Reyes. You stepped into Victor Hall's world, and in his world, there are no innocent bystanders. There's only survival." Maya's fingers tightened around the envelope as her mind raced. The house, the money. It was more than she had ever dreamed of having. She thought of her tiny apartment with its leaky pipes and peeling paint, of the double shifts she worked to pay rent and send a little money back to her mother in El Salvador. But she also thought of Victor's warning, "They're watching. They're always watching." "Why is he doing this?" she asked, her voice low. "If he's so powerful, why would he care about me?" Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Victor Hall doesn't forget loyalty. You showed him kindness when you had no reason to. He values that in ways most people can't understand. Maya frowned, her skepticism growing. So, this is his way of saying thank you? It's his way of ensuring you're safe, Carter replied. And yes, of thanking you. But make no mistake, if you accept this, you're aligning yourself with him. That comes with responsibilities. Maya's stomach churned. Responsibilities like what? Discretion, first and foremost, Carter said, and a willingness to follow certain protocols. You'd be under Mr. Hall's protection, but that also means being part of his network. There are expectations. Expectations, Maya repeated, her voice laced with unease. Carter's smile was faint but sharp. Nothing illegal, I assure you. Think of it as mutual trust. He protects you, and in return, you ensure his secrets remain secrets. Maya hesitated, the enormity of the situation weighing on her. She wanted to say no, to tell Carter to take his envelope and his ominous warnings and leave her out of it. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. If she walked away now, she'd always be looking over her shoulder, waiting for the shadow of Victor Hall's enemies to catch up with her. She took a deep breath, her voice steadier than she expected. What happens if I accept? Carter's gaze flicked to the envelope. You move into the house. You're given security details, discreet, of course, and instructions for how to contact us if needed. Your life continues, but with added protection. And if I don't? Carter's smile faded. Then you're on your own, Ms. Reyes. I'm sure you can imagine how quickly that could become problematic. Maya's heart pounded as she weighed her options. She thought of her mother, her friends, the life she had worked so hard to build. If she accepted Victor's offer, she'd be stepping into a world she didn't understand, one filled with danger and uncertainty. But if she refused, she'd be abandoning the only safety net she had. Finally, she met Carter's gaze. Okay, she said, her voice firm. I'll do it. Carter's smile returned, this time with a hint of satisfaction. A wise choice, Ms. Reyes. You won't regret it. He rose from his chair and extended a hand. Maya shook it reluctantly, her palm clammy against his cool grip. Pack your essentials, Carter said, his tone brisk. We'll arrange for the rest of your belongings to be moved later. Your new life starts now. Maya followed him back to the car, her mind spinning. The luxury vehicle hummed quietly as it pulled away from the gated mansion and headed toward her apartment. As they drove, Carter spoke again. One more thing, Ms. Reyes. What now? She asked, her nerves fraying. Victor Hall doesn't make offers lightly, Carter said. If you ever find yourself questioning his intentions, remember this. He doesn't just protect people. He invests in them. Maya's brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Carter's smile was enigmatic. You'll find out soon enough. When they arrived at her apartment, Carter handed her a sleek black phone. This is your direct line to me. If anything feels off, or if anyone contacts you about what happened at the mansion, call immediately. No exceptions. Maya nodded, tucking the phone into her bag. She packed quickly, grabbing a duffel bag with clothes and a few personal items. As she zipped it closed, her gaze lingered on a photograph of her mother. Are you sure about this, Maya? She whispered to herself. But there was no time for second-guessing. Carter was waiting, his expression unreadable as she locked her apartment door for what felt like the last time. The drive to her new house was uneventful, but Maya's anxiety grew with every mile. When they finally arrived at the gated community, she was struck by the sheer opulence of it all. Her new home was breathtaking, a modern, two-story house with clean lines and expansive windows. The front lawn was perfectly manicured, and a sleek black SUV was parked in the driveway. Welcome home, Carter said as the car stopped. Maya stepped out, her heart pounding as she took in the sight before her. The house felt both inviting and intimidating, a symbol of the new life she had agreed to step into. As she approached the front door, it swung open smoothly, revealing a woman in a tailored suit. Ms. Reyes, the woman said with a warm smile. I'm Lydia, your house manager. I'll be assisting you with anything you need. Maya blinked. House manager? Yes, Lydia said. Mr. Hall believes in providing his people with the best resources. If you have any questions or concerns, you can come to me directly. Maya nodded, stepping inside. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Polished floors, high ceilings, and modern furnishings that looked straight out of a magazine. As she explored the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true. And then she saw it. A small envelope on the dining table with her name written in elegant script. She opened it cautiously, her hands trembling. Inside was a single note in Victor Hall's handwriting. Maya, trust is the foundation of everything. Protect mine, and I will protect yours. VH. Her chest tightened as she folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. This wasn't just a house, she realized. It was a contract, and she had just signed up for something far bigger than she could have imagined. Maya woke the next morning in the master bedroom of her new house, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, she let herself marvel at the luxury around her. The soft silk sheets, the carefully curated decor, the subtle hum of central air that spoke of quiet efficiency. But the thrill was fleeting. The weight of the previous day's events settled heavily on her chest. She wasn't just living in a new house. She was living in a gilded cage, bound by an unspoken agreement with a man whose world operated in shadows. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, pulling her from her thoughts. She reached for it, expecting a message from Carter or Lydia. Instead, the screen displayed an unknown number. Curious but cautious, she answered. Hello? Maya Reyes? A male voice asked, smooth but clipped. Yes, who is this? The man's tone shifted, becoming sharper. This is Detective Harris with the city police. We need to speak with you regarding an incident involving Victor Hall. Maya's stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Harris said, his voice laced with frustration. You were at his mansion the night of the incident. We have witnesses. Meet me at the precinct, or I'll come to you. The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone, her heart racing. How had the police gotten her name? And what did they think she knew? She barely had time to process the call before her new phone buzzed. A message from Carter. We need to talk. Now. Her unease grew as she dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. Carter was waiting in the living room, his posture as impeccable as ever, but his expression was darker than she had ever seen. Lydia stood nearby, her usual composed demeanor tinged with concern. You had a visitor this morning, Carter said without preamble. Maya's brow furrowed. I didn't see anyone. You wouldn't, he replied. They left this. He held up a small envelope. Maya's name was scrawled across it in the same elegant handwriting as the note from Victor, but the message inside was anything but reassuring. You should have stayed out of it. We're watching. Maya felt her knees weaken, but she steadied herself against the arm of the couch. Who sent this? That's what we're trying to determine, Carter said, his voice low. The security team is reviewing footage, but it's clear someone wants to scare you. Well, it's working, Maya said, her voice shaking, and it's in Carter's expression darkened further. Detective Harris? Yes, she said. He said he'd come here if I didn't meet him. Carter exchanged a glance with Lydia, who nodded and stepped out of the room. Harris is persistent, Carter said, but he's also corrupt. He works for people who want Victor out of the picture. Maya's eyes widened. Are you saying he's in on this? Most likely, Carter said, which means you need to tread carefully. They're trying to use you as leverage to paint Victor as something he's not. Maya's head spun. What am I supposed to do? If I ignore them, they'll come after me. If I talk, I could make things worse. Carter's gaze was unyielding. You follow our lead. Do not meet Harris under any circumstances. If he contacts you again, forward everything to me. And what about the note? She asked, her voice rising. What if they come back? That's why we're increasing your security detail, Carter said, his tone firm. You're not alone in this, Maya, but you need to trust us. Trust. The word felt hollow in her ears, but she nodded anyway. What choice did she have? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Security cameras were installed throughout the house, and Maya noticed new faces patrolling the perimeter. Lydia stayed close, checking in frequently with an air of quiet reassurance. That evening, Maya found herself pacing the living room, her anxiety mounting. The house felt too quiet, the weight of unseen threats pressing down on her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing. It was another message from Carter. "You're being cinephile. Read it carefully." Moments later, a secure link appeared in her inbox. Maya hesitated before clicking it, her heart pounding as the file loaded. It was a dossier on Victor Hall. The file detailed his business dealings, his rise to wealth, and his connections to shadowy organizations that operated outside the law. But what caught Maya's attention were the pages marked with bold red warnings. High-value target, threats active. The threats included names, photos, and descriptions of individuals who had tried to sabotage Victor or eliminate him outright. As she scrolled, her eyes landed on one name that made her blood run cold. Detective Harris, active affiliate. Her breath hitched. Carter hadn't been exaggerating. Harris was deeply tied to the people trying to take Victor down. But there was something else. A photo of a man she didn't recognize, his face scarred and his eyes cold. The file labeled him as Dominic Crow, contractor. Beneath the photo, a single line of text sent a chill through her. Believed to have infiltrated Hall's inner circle. Approach with extreme caution. Maya sat back, her mind racing. If this Crow was involved, he could be anywhere. A knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. She grabbed her phone and walked cautiously to the entrance. "It's Lydia," came the familiar voice. Maya exhaled in relief, unlocking the door. Lydia stepped inside, carrying a small black case. "What's that?" Maya asked. "Insurance," Lydia said, setting the case on the table. She opened it to reveal a compact handgun and a small instruction manual. Maya recoiled. "You can't be serious." "Unfortunately, I am," Lydia said, her tone matter-of-fact. "This is for your protection. We'll arrange for training, but for now, keep it close." Maya stared at the weapon, her stomach churning. "I'm not a fighter. I clean houses for a living." "You're more than that now," Lydia said gently. "And you're stronger than you think." Maya wasn't so sure, but she nodded, her fingers brushing the cold metal of the gun. As the night wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would test every bit of her resolve. And when her phone buzzed again, displaying an unknown number, she knew the storm was closer than she thought. Maya's hand hovered over her phone as it buzzed with the unknown number's insistent call. Every instinct screamed at her not to answer, but curiosity and fear won. She swiped the screen. "Hello?" "Maya," the voice rasped, cold and deliberate. "You've made yourself quite important lately." Her breath caught. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "Let's just say I'm someone with a vested interest in Victor Hall. You've caught his attention, and now you've caught mine." Her grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want?" "What I want," the voice said, its calm tone laced with menace, "is for you to understand the position you're in. Hall may have promised you safety, but he won't protect you when things go sideways. He never does." Maya's pulse raced. "You don't know anything about him." "I know everything about him," the voice snapped, its veneer of civility cracking. "And I know that you're just another pawn in his game." Her stomach churned as she thought of the note left at her door, the file Carter had sent, and the name she couldn't forget, Dominic Crow. "Crow," she said, her voice trembling. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. "Ah," the voice said after a moment, amusement creeping back in. "So they've told you about me. Good. Then you know I'm not someone you can ignore." "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "Simple," Crow said. "Meet me tonight. Alone. I'll tell you the truth about Victor Hall, and why trusting him will be the worst mistake of your life." Maya hesitated, her mind racing. Every instinct told her this was a trap, but the fear of being left in the dark gnawed at her. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice unsteady. "Don't take too long," Crow replied. "Your window is closing." The line went dead. Maya sank into the couch, her heart pounding. She stared at the phone in her hand, torn between telling Carter everything and meeting Crow to find out what he knew. The thought of keeping this from Carter filled her with dread, but she couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that there were things Victor, and by extension, Carter, wasn't telling her. The weight of the gun Lydia had given her inched into her awareness. If she went a Crow, she wouldn't go unarmed. She grabbed the weapon, her fingers trembling as she tucked it into her bag. If this was a trap, she'd make sure she wasn't defenseless. That night, Maya slipped out of the house unnoticed, her heart pounding with every step. She'd chosen not to tell Carter, partly out of fear he'd stop her, and partly because she wasn't sure she could trust him. The location Crow had sent her was an abandoned industrial site on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of rust and decay, the faint glow of distant streetlights casting eerie shadows across the crumbling buildings. Maya tightened her grip on her bag as she approached the meeting point, a dimly lit loading dock with cracked concrete and rusted rails. A figure emerged from the shadows, his scarred face illuminated by the faint light of a nearby street lamp. "Dominic Crow," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "You came," Crow said, his tone tinged with approval. "I wasn't sure you had it in you." "Cut the small talk," Maya said. "What do you want from me?" Crow chuckled, his scarred face twisting into a grin. "Straight to the point. I like that." He took a step closer, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed. "Victor Hall isn't who you think he is," he began. "You think he's some benevolent benefactor, swooping in to save you from the big bad wolves? He's not. He's one of us." Maya frowned. "One of who?" "People who thrive in the shadows," Crow said, his voice dropping. "Hall built his empire on secrets, blackmail, and betrayal. He doesn't protect people out of kindness, Maya. He does it to own them." Her stomach churned. "You're lying." "Am I?" Crow said, his grin widening. "Tell me this. Did he tell you why he was poisoned? Did he tell you who's after him and why?" Maya hesitated, her silence answering the question. "Exactly," Crow said. "Because if you knew, you'd realize he's the reason you're in danger." "What are you talking about?" she demanded. Crow leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Hall's enemies are everywhere, and every one of them has blood on their hands. Blood he helped spill. You're just the latest pawn in his little game. He needs you to take the heat off himself." Maya's mind raced as she tried to process his words. Was it possible Crow was telling the truth? Could Victor have brought her into this mess for his own benefit? "Why should I believe you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Crow smirked. "Because I have proof." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim tablet. Tapping the screen, he handed it to her. Maya's eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. They contained damning evidence, emails, financial records, and surveillance footage implicating Victor in shady dealings she couldn't ignore. Her hands shook as she handed the tablet back. "If this is true, why show me? Why not take it to the authorities?" Crow's expression darkened. "Because the authorities work for him. People like Hall don't fall because of the system. They fall because of people brave enough to stand up to them." Maya's mind whirled. If Crow was right, she was just another pawn in Victor's elaborate game. But if Crow was lying, trusting him could cost her everything. Before she could respond, the faint sound of footsteps reached her ears. Crow tensed, his hand darting to his side. "They're here," he muttered. "Who's here?" Maya whispered. Crow turned to her, his expression deadly serious. "Hall's people. They don't like loose ends." Before Maya could react, the shadows around them came alive with figures in tactical gear. "Run!" Crow hissed, shoving her toward the darkness. Maya didn't need to be told twice. She sprinted toward the maze of buildings, her heart pounding as shouts and gunfire erupted behind her. Her only thought was survival.